Hello, welcome to the Age of Sigmar Stat Center. I'm your host, Rob, and today we're going to be looking at all of the event results from the weekend just gone. There were 3 events that we're going to cover, as well as 2 team events, but the team events we don't generally tend to cover because the data is a little bit skewed because of pairings. So we're going to be covering 3 events, which does mean that we're going to be covering 131 players across 2 countries. We're covering ACO, Battle of the Bay, and Broken Ranks. Don't forget that event attendance for Age of Sigmar is up 50% compared to last year, which means the game is healthy and growing in a really massive way, which is awesome. And that's probably down to you as the listener, as someone who's actively involved in competitive Age of Sigmar and really enjoys the game. So thank you to all of you. You've been great. And I hope you are enjoying it. All of the data that I look at is backed up by the Age of Sigmar Stat Center stuff done by the TSN Age of Sigmar Stats, organised by Rob and Ziggy, so you should go check it out. It's got up-to-the-date data, which is super really useful if you want to go check it out. And thank you to everyone who supports the show via Twitch or BCP or any of those other things. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get on with the stats. The first event that we're going to look at, our largest event this weekend, is the ACO 2023 Age of Sigmar Championship, which I think was organised by Games Workshop, and it was held here. For people watching at home, it was held at Atlantic City, New Jersey, in a huge conference centre. So if you listen to the podcast, I'm describing a huge conference centre. So we had 87 players playing at this event in the USA. And if we take a look at our top 3 players, they are all from Grand Alliance Death. We've got Alex Cosgrove playing Ossiarch Bonereapers. We've got Emma Mangles playing Soulblight Gravelords, and then Christopher Johnson playing Soulblight Gravelords. But those 2 Soulblight Gravelords are effectively completely different. And Alex Cosgrove is very much like I talked about in my review of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, running what I consider to be one of the lists that's going to do well, but please don't forget, when I do read through this list, we're off the back of Michael Rausch, Swaggy Shadow Sword, already winning an event a few weeks ago with a bunch of Death Riders, like 5 or 6 units of Death Riders. Might be more, might be like 7 or 8. So there's lots of play inside of the Bonereapers book, but there are also some weaknesses in the Bonereapers book, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the Bonereapers book that did so well was Mortis Praetorians, which means if an enemy unit charges... completes a charge, then one of your units once per turn can declare a charge in the enemy's charge phase if they're within 12 inches of it, which is pretty good. So you get to put some of your very strong units into combat with them, which they weren't expecting. Then you got Arkan the Black, who's a great wizard. He gets pluses to cast and also extends the range of those casts as well. And a lot of those casts are either debuffing their enemy or buffing your units, which is really, really good. I think Arkan's like a really good pick in conjunction with Catacross. I think you're always going to see Catacross in every single list, pretty much. Not in every list, but like a huge percentage of the list you're going to see, because he has the ability to add +1 to hit and +1 to save to your whole army for 1 command point. In fact, he can even make it so that he does that command for free. That's amazing. Steals command points off your opponent, makes an enemy unit -1 to hit. These are all things he just does instinctively. If he's fighting a hero or monster, he's legitimately very good in combat, but terrible if he's fighting anyone else, which really talks to the narrative haughty nature of Catacross, and actually I think is really legit. So Arkan and Catacross also have really good recursion / healing into their units, because they can put multiple wounds back into different units around them, including each other. So it's very tough to kill Catacross and Arkan outright, and then if you don't, their healing is pretty prodigious. And they've also got a Bone Shaper in there as well, who has got the Artisan's Key, which also doubles the effectiveness of his healing as well. So you get this really interesting like triple heal list. And then we go into the units that he's got, which is 2 units of 6 Immortis Guard. And those Immortis Guard are amazingly survivable, especially thanks to Catacross. They're going to end up on a 2-up save, and they're going to be 30 wounds across each unit of Immortis Guard. But the healing I was just talking about means that they could put Arkan, Catacross, and the Mortals and Bone Shaper can put up to 4 Immortis Guard back into 1 unit every hero phase. So even if you do manage to punch through the Immortis Guard, they're going to heal back really well. And they can do that even if they're engaged in combat. You do have to leave space for those models to be put back into the unit. So, if you ended up surrounding them, they wouldn't be able to place them back. So it's a nice way of kind of shutting that unit down. And then a unit of Kavalos Death Riders, just because it fits. And the Bowtie Shrieker, which is legitimately, again, really great because it reduces enemy ward saves down by 1 within 12 inches and makes him immune, makes him not be able to take battle shot tests. makes them not be able to ignore battle shot tests with something like Inspiring Presence. So really, really solid, very defensive. Someone in the chat described it as if the Royal Guard were out like for a stroll, and you just happened upon Arkan, Katakros, the leader of the faction, with their bodyguards. Really cool list, very survivable, and also potentially very, very good in the next GHB. I think that's something I'm going to talk about a lot as we go through these, because Arkan is a very good caster. Now, Arkan won't be able to have access to some of the things that non-named characters under 9 wounds have, the Andorian lodestones, but the Bone Shaper can. And so that's pretty interesting, but we'll see how that ends up working in the future. And I would say that, like, while we did speculate on these Immortis Guard being very, very good during the Battle Tome review, when I did the Battle Tome review, which is on YouTube, it's still really fun to see them on the tabletop. Immortis Guard never saw any play pretty much across the world during the last cycle for that book. And so it's really fun seeing them on the tabletop. And they've literally been out a minute, so it's fine. Like, that book also, and I did say I was going to mention this, it's worth talking about, the book has had a bit of a rough time since release. When they released the book, they only have one shooting option, if you ignore like direct damage coming from spells, and that shooting option is the Mortek Crawler, and it just isn't any good. And then in addition to that, they did have an option to potentially build around Mortek Guard and the Gothizzar Harvester, but then the Gothizzar Harvester was just nuked from orbit in an FAQ. So they really have reduced down the viable units inside that book. Mortek Guard, in my opinion, is still viable, definitely. But they also fulfill basically the same role as a Mortis Guard. They're a frontline, like, defensive / combat unit. Stalkers are like kind of like a Mortis Guard, but maybe a Mortis Guard are just better because they're more survivable. And then Kavalos Death Riders are fine. So, like, and the book's not very broad, so I think that's a fair interpretation of where we're at with Bonereapers, and so congratulations. Right, the 2 Soulblight Gravelords lists I think are quite interesting. We have our first one. It was run by Emma Mangles. Shout out to Emma, like I said before, my favourite shit poster. She's running Vrykros, and Vrykros allows you to do a heroic action where you get to summon a unit of dogs, so direwolves, which is 20 units, once per game. Also, it allows named characters like Belladama to take artifacts of power when normally you wouldn't be allowed to do that. What allows you to take enhancements. Normally you're not allowed to do that. So this is the only thing inside Age of Sigmar that lets you do it. Then a Vampire Lord with Tunnel Master to go and grab, to do a battle tactic. Another Vampire Lord, and then Belladama, a Necromancer, and then Torgillis the Chamberlain. The 2 bits that I think are quite important are Torgillis and Belladama. So Belladama is a good caster with some great spells, but the important part, I mean, all of her is important, but she has got the artifact power, the Ulfankani Phylactery, and Torgillis the Chamberlain also does this. Both of them do a 5-up ward save aura for summonable units. I think one of them's within 9 and one of them's within 12, I'm going to guess at. It's something like that. So you have 2 centers of AoE 5-up ward save to friendly units. So that's huge. Massive survivability around these characters. Then, in addition, she has 3 units of 40 Deadwalker zombies, taking up to 120 zombies, and another unit of 20 Deadwalker zombies. So that's 140 Deadwalker zombies. They're going to be able to do 6s to wound. They're going to cause mortal wounds, thanks to the 2 units of Corpse Cart that are in the list as well. The Unholy Lodestone is going to give pluses to cast, so all of the spells that you're going to see from the leaders are going to do much better. They also have murder rolls, so every time you kill one, you'll roll a dice on a 5-up, you'll do a mortal wound back as well. Which is, so they're more survivable thanks to the 5-up ward save. There's loads of spell support. They do mortal wounds themselves in combat, and if you were to kill all of the zombies in the list, you would take 40 mortal wounds. Roughly on average from the murder rolls. So that's quite a lot, and there's a ton of wounds because there's also another unit of direwolves in this list in conjunction with another unit of direwolves that you would summon. So that's an additional 40 wounds that you're going to add on, taking us up to 200 wounds worth of summonable units with 5-up ward saves. And then finally, as if there's somehow room, there's a unit of Graveguard, so 20 Graveguard in this list, all with Great White Blades. You'll see this a lot, quite commonly in a lot of these Soulblight Gravelords lists, because they're just an incredible melee front line. They do loads of damage, loads of output, they're just really solid. So you love to see it. And then our other Soulblight Gravelords list. So shout out to Emma as well. That's a lot of zombies. Apparently she had the most of zombies at the event, which is really fun to see. Then our final Soulblight Gravelords list in the 5-0 bracket is our more classic one that we've been talking about. Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, Neferata, and then a Vampire Lord. The Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon has a command trait Doom Minions, which lets you pick 3 enemy units that aren't heroes or monsters, and your army hits them on 2s. So your units hit them on 2s, which means if your unit normally hits on 5s and you give them all-out attack to hit on 4s, you couldn't go any better than hitting on a 4. This is one of the only ways in Age of Sigmar to skip being able to jump down more than you can normally get +1 to hit. So you go down to like a 2 to hit, which is amazing. Shout out to No Mercy Mike in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Then Neferata is amazing because Neferata's got a spell that allows you to make a unit so that it doesn't suffer any rend, so it makes it unrendable. It used to be so you couldn't get pluses to those. You could add to that save as well. Can't do that quite. You can't do that as much anymore. So you have an unrendable unit of 10 Blood Knights, which are 3 wounds each, so that is 30 wounds on a 3-up armor save. And then the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is also got an unrendable armor save of a 3-up, thanks to Cloak of Mist and Shadows. The real reason Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is a real problem, though, the Doom Minions thing is obviously really good. It gets +1 attack because it's in the Legion of Blood, like from a heroic action. It's got a heroic action that lets you ignore ward saves, which is also really good as well. But the real problem with a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, when you're dealing with it, is that it heals in combat so well. The hunger, every combat phase, it can heal up to 6 wounds. It's got a good wound pool anyway. It's got a good armor save. It's got a nice ward save. That's the real problem. It kind of feels good, in my personal opinion. I feel like a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, coming from Warhammer Fantasy Battle Days, needs to be a devastating threat on the tabletop. But it is legitimately a problem. And that's really fun to see. Neferata also gets +1 to cast because she's a vampire at range. And then the Graveguard are in this list as well. Again, another unit of Graveguard, just because you're dealing with Blood Knights, you're dealing with a Vampire and Zombie Dragon, and then 20 Graveguard come in and slap your face off. And finally, you've got 2 units of Death Rattle Skeletons, which are great. I've talked about this a lot. Lots of the videos that I make lots of the content I make, when I'm streaming doesn't make it to YouTube because it's just kind of free-form thought with the chat. It doesn't make it to a podcast. But you can run loads of Skeletons. Skeletons are great. The way that they heal at the start of each combat phase is really fun. It's very skeleton-y. That's wrong. Skeleton-y. But skeleton-y. Yes, it's a lot of skeleton-y. Yeah, is what it is. But they're great. And if you get the time to paint up a bunch of skeletons, they're not as good as zombies at the moment, definitely, but they do a different job. And they're really fun. They're really, really fun. And then there are 10 direwolves in there as well. So those are all the 5-0s from the event. Let's go look at the 4-1s. 4-1s. And let's go through them now. So Nicholas Walters with his Iron Jaws Bloodtooths list. Josh Bennett with his host of Slanesh Pretenders. Caleb Waters with Disciples of Zinch. Cody Saltz with Seraphon Fans of Soter. We're going to look at that in detail. Dale Irvin with his Gloomspite Gits, Jaws of Mork. Julian Lesage with Karajan Overlords Barak Gnar. Mike Mercurio with his Soulblight Gravelords. Timothy Muller with his Gloomspite Gits, Ron Wiseman with Soulblight Gravelords Legion of Blood, David Clam with Stormcast Eternals Hammers of Sigmar, and then Brian Kissel with his Sons of Behemoth Stomp Tribe, Jonathan Green with his Slaves of Darkness, which is an amazing list, and then Mike D with his Iron Jaws Bloodtooths. Right, okay, so let's talk through these lists, shall we? So that's who was running them. I'm just going to talk about what list they were. Our Iron Jaws list had a Weird Knob Shaman, a Mega Boss and Maw Crusher, 2 War Chanters. They had +1 damage to Iron Jaws units. Each one will add +1 damage to a different Iron Jaws unit. You can't stack it. An Auric Mega Boss on foot with a Destroyer and Tunnel Master. That means there's a cute trick where you can teleport, still move afterwards using the Mighty Destroyer's ability, and then Destroyer makes that Mega Boss much more fighty, which is really fun. And Uruk, 2 units of 6 Gore Grunters with the ability to move thanks to Mighty Destroyers. That makes them very fast with +1 damage because they have 2 melee attack profiles, one for the pig and one for the rider. That +1 damage is much more effective and you get better economies of scale, so they're very, very good. And then 10 Uruk Brutes, which actually are pretty interesting inside this meta because they stop one wound models from scoring on objectives. It's pretty decent actually, and you see this twice, so I'm not surprised to see that in there. Our Heat Knights Slash army is Pretenders, meaning you generate lots of extra CP and you can issue multiple versions of the same command. Be'lakor, best unit in the game in my opinion, is a wizard that casts 2 spells, but more importantly can shut down an enemy power piece for over potentially the course of 2 battle rounds or 2 turns if you use it right, called Dark Mastery. Definitely Bellacor's amazing. Contorted Epitome has got an artifact called the Crown of Dark Secrets, which is units with one unit that you choose within 6 inches has all of its melee attacks reduced down to a minimum of 1 before modifiers. This is actually really, really interesting because you can pick, very much like Be'lakor, an enemy power piece, and you can shut off how many attacks they do, or if they can even attack at all. So it's a double shutdown, which is, I think, important. And you've got the Mask, which is kind of a Alpha Strike, like assassin unit, which is quite useful for maybe taking out some backline characters. Then there are 3 units of 22 Blissbarb Archers, which have got a very good shooting profile, and also because of being in the Pretender subfaction, you can do a triple stand and shoot, which is an amazing amount of attacks. I think a unit of 22 Blissbarb Archers is 44 shots, so you're looking at over 120 shots from those 2 units of Blissbarb Archers. They've got Rend. The 2 units of Blissbarb Seekers, if they shoot first, they can reduce an enemy armor save down by 1. So that means that you're going to have Blissbarb Seekers shooting and reducing armor saves, and then Blissbarb Archers shooting loads of shots with. So it effectively makes them Rend 2. So that's very, very effective. Very, very effective. Then you've got Disciples of Tzeentch list that did well. This is Guild of Summoners, so you generate fate points by casting spells. You summon more Lords of Change. A Magister, which is bonded to a Kronspine Incarnate, which is a 36 wound character monster that sometimes won't die. An Ogroid Thermitage, a Lord of Change, and Ogroid Thermitage as well. Second time we've seen a double Ogroid Thermitage, actually. A pretty okay Galician champion. That can do some good combat, be very interesting in the net GHB, because he's also going to be an Andorian Lodestone as well. And with Tunnel Master and the Shield of Fate could be quite tanky as well. 2 units, 1 unit of Carrick Acolytes, 2 units of Carrick Acolytes, a unit of Zangors, which Zangors, 10 Zangor in Tzeentch, really good. They've got up to 50 attacks on the charge, which is really good. And then Kronspine Incarnate Agur. So the Incarnate basically tanks for what is the Tzeentch screen. All the wizards cast those spells. You summon some Lords of Change, move forward. Quicksilver Swords, Umbral Spell Portal, and the Burning Sigil of Tzeentch as endless spells. Okay, our Seraphon list. This is the first time that we've started talking about this Seraphon list, and it's not going to be the last time unless we see some big FAQs come in the Battle Scroll update. It's a Starborn list and Fangs of Sotak. This means you get access to, every time you cast a spell or your enemy casts a spell, and every time you unbind a spell, then you get to get celestial summoning points, yeah? And this means like you just get to summon some units on the board. There are also some additional abilities you can do with those celestial call points, sorry, that's what they're called, as well, and that is, like, and they're good as well. One of them is an AoE Mortal Wound Bomb. In this list, the General is a Slann Starmaster who has a command trait Lord of Celestial Resonance. So every time you would generate a Celestial Call point, those summoning points that I talked to you about, you get to double it. So don't just imagine that the whole book has been pointed for only doing that once. You now generate them twice as fast, which is insane. Then you've got the Space Folder Stave. You get access in this army to a heroic action that lets you teleport a unit. The Space Folder Stave lets you teleport a unit outside of 7 inches versus normally outside of 9 inches, which is really good because in this list there is a Skink Oracle on Troglodon. He's got the Sacred Stegodon Helm, which adds +1 save to his armor save, making him a little bit more defensive. So this means on the first turn, if you want to, you can teleport that Troglodon 7 inches away from the enemy. Then you have you have the Lord Croak. Lord Croak can cast 4 spells with, I think, +2 or 3 to cast. The Ossiarch Bonereapers is going to add 6 inches to the range of those spells. He has on his War Scroll a 12-inch spell, which picks 3 units within 12 inches, and they take D3 mortal wounds. Obviously, now that goes up to 18 inches, thanks to the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and Lord Croak, and as can the Slann, can cast spells through the Skink Oracle on Troglodon. So what happens is, you teleport, can't stop this teleport, it's not a spell, a Skink Oracle on Troglodon, 7 inches away from the enemy. You then have an 18-inch AoE effect. You pick 3 enemy units in your opponent's army for each spell that Lord Croak casts, and they take D3 mortal wounds. On average, you should do 2. So that means Croak is going to generate, at about a 36-inch range, 24 mortal wounds against your enemy. And then for every spell you cast, you're going to generate a summoning point on top of that. Of course, ways to try and get rid of these would be to shoot them or fight them. They have a unit of Saurus Guard, which is a battle line unit of 10, which is 20 wounds. They get to do a bodyguard save, so any wounds that you would pass on to any of the heroes in this list, the Star Master, Croak, the Oracle, the Astaroth Bannerbearer, or the Skink Starseer, you can put wounds onto the Saurus Guard instead. They also still can benefit from a ward save as well. Talking about ward saves, the Skink Starseer has got the ability to shut down ward saves from your opponent as well, so those mortal wounds will go through more effectively. And then finally, there are 4 units of 10 skinks just trying to screen out the board. And lastly, there are some ender spells. Chronomantic Cogs, which makes sense because all wizards within 9 inches get to re-roll 12 inches get to re-roll their casts, which is really good because you want to make sure you get all of those spells off because it's going to get you more summoning points. The Burning Head, which just does some mortal wounds, and then the Horrorghast, which means your opponent can't use Inspiring Presence against battle shock tests. That's really, really effective because you're going to be doing lots of AoE damage, so many units could run away once a Horrorghast has been cast as well. So, a very effective list. It's interesting to see if it's going to define the meta. There are obviously armies, Myriad, Ossiarch Bonereapers, Khorne, who are going to really enjoy playing into these lists as well. I would say also Beasts of Chaos are going to enjoy playing into this. But that's to be seen. Is this going to be one of those dominant lists? We don't know. It went 4-1 at this event, so it isn't the face roll army that many people were predicting, but it does sound really strong. Okay, a Gits list that we got is Jaws of Mork, Fungoid Cave Shaman, Squig Boss, Scragrot the Loon King. 2 units of 10 Boingrot Bounders, which are just a frontline cavalry unit, which do lots of mortal wounds on the charge and have a good profile. They get +1 attack from being in Jaws of Mork on their mounts jaw attacks. 36 Squig Herd, who also get +1 attack on their on their jaw attacks. 20 Mooncan Stabbers, who can hold objectives from 9 inches away, and 2 units of those as well, which is really good, which means your opponent has to move towards you. This is actually a bit of an advantage to a Gits army. Lots of Gits armies like to play very alpha, so they move all of their units right at the enemy. What I quite like about this version of the list is the Mooncan Stabbers mean that you have to move closer to the Gits army, closer to their Loon Shrine as well, which is where many of their buff pieces are, meaning that you get to countercharge. If your countercharge units die, you can summon them back from the shrine much easier, which is quite fun. And then you've got a unit of Sneaky Snufflers, which is going to be able to make a unit have a 5 at ward save, and then a Marsh Crawler Slogoth, which gives everyone +1 to hit. So very fun list. I quite like that. It reminds me of Noah's list from Worlds, where you're making your opponent move towards you more than you alpha your opponent, which is fun. Next we have a Kharadron Overlord's army in Barak Nar, Admiral, a Chemist, and a Navigator. Another Chemist, a Rune Lord, and an Archon Admiral. Then 2 units of Grunstruck Thunderers, 2 units of 10 Grunstruck Thunderers, in here as well. But no 15s. And then an Ironclad and a unit of 20 Hammerers, making this a super fun, interesting list. Going 4-1 as well. I really like that. Having the Rune Lord in there, being able to do being able to do mortal wounds with the hammers is awesome. I really like that. Soulblight Gravelords in Vrykros, very much like Emma's list. Belladama, Necromancer, Torgillus, Vampire Lord, loads of zombies, Corpse Carts, and also some Graveguard in there as well. Cheeky unit of Fellbats. There's another Gloomspite Gits, but this time it's King's Gits, which is fun. Dankhold Trog Boss, Scragrot, Fungoid Cave Shaman, Web Spinner Shaman, and then some Rock Guts and Fellwater Trogoths, 2 units of 6 and a unit of 6 Fellwaters, and then a Dankhold Trog Boss, a Gobblepalooza, and Sneaky Snufflers. I really like this list because it's nowhere near as strong as people thought it was going to be. It's only ever ended up in the 4-1 category. It's got really good armor saves on the Rock Guts. They fight really well. Think of them as like a Nurgle army, but they don't have lots of units doing that. So they're fairly limited in their board presence as well. And then a unit of Fellwater Trogoths for stripping armor saves. So a good army, but never too strong an army. I think the Trogs are positioned really well inside the game right now, so I think that's great. Then you've got Soulblight Gravelords, Legion of Blood. So this is Necromancer, Vampire Lord, and Zombie Dragon. that it has got an unrenderable armor save. And then just some stuff. Zombies, skeletons, direwolves. A unit of 30 Death Rattle skeletons, like I was talking about earlier. Absolutely brilliant. Really tough to get rid of that, especially with Neferata spell on them, so they have a 4-up unrenderable save. And then a unit of 10 Graveguard in the list as well. So just a little bit more MSU, so multiple small units. Really fun. Our Saves to Darkness list is super cool. It's got 2 allied cockatrices, a Chaos Lord and Karkadrak, and this is all inside Knights of the Empty Throne, so anything that's mounted is going to get a run and charge on its War Scroll. Chaos Sorcerer Lord, an Exalted Hero of Chaos, and then 2 units of Chaos Chariots, a unit of 10 Chaos Knights, these are all Mark of Nurgle, so they're -1 to be wounded, a unit of 3 Varangard, and then 3 Gore Beast Chariots as well. So really fun. So it's an army that's going to charge at you, do damage, and it's going to pin you in because it's Mark of Nurgle with a good armor save, and the cockatrices are going to make it so that you potentially can only hit them on 6s. So a bit of a what we would call an alpha pin list, which is fun. And finally, our Iron Jaws army, Mega Boss and Maw Crusher, War Chanter, Mega Boss, another War Chanter, another Weird Knob Shaman. Honestly, I'm really triggered by people that don't do War Chanter, War Chanter. Like, when you write your list, just do War Chanter, War Chanter. Why are you going like War Chanter, some other characters, another War Chanter? Just start writing 2 War Chanters in, then move on. 2 units of 6 Gore Grunters and another unit of 10 Brutes. And exactly like I told everything previously about Iron Jaws. I hope everyone had a really nice time at the event. Our next event, as you can see here, is the Battle of the Bay, happening over in New Zealand and organised by Mike Stewart. Shout out Mike, thanks for organising it. We always shout our TOs when we can. It's organised here at the Island Bay Bowling Club, which is pretty nice. I don't know if you've ever been in Wellington, so shout out. There were no 5-0s at this event, and instead we got a bunch of 4-1s. We'll talk about them now. Ryan Lynn Watts with his Soulblight Gravelords, Vicross Dynasty. Dan Hughes with his Ossiarch Bonereapers, Null Myriad. Alex Sinclair with his Disciples of Zinch Guild of Summoners, and Philip Cordy with his Ogre Tribes Meat Fist army. Meat Fist, Meat Fist. Let's look at those lists, shall we? Soulblight Gravelords with the Vicross Dynasty with Belladama, a Necromancer, and a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. And then Torgillus the Chamberlain. Don't forget he's given that 5-up ward save. 2 units of 20 Deadwalker Zombies, 30 Death Rattle Skeletons, 10 Direwolves, and then 10 Graveguard, some Banshees, a Mortis Engine, and then some Fell Bats. This is just, again, one of those very interesting lists where there's like lots of multiple parts happening here. All of the units bring a little bit to the party. Torgillus obviously working so well with those Deadwalker Zombies, Direwolves and Skeletons with a 5-up ward save. The healing being really powerful as well. The Banshee making it so you can ignore spells. Graveguard doing a little bit of fighting. Mortis Engine doing some AoE damage. Fellbats to just screen or grab a little objective. Belladama and the Necromancer giving all of those buffs and synergy to the rest of the army as well. So then our Ossiarch Bonereapers list is Null Myriad. Someone said, I can't believe Null Myriad's being used outside of teams. Null Myriad's got the same advantage in singles event it does in teams if it runs into a bunch of magic users, because it does have a 2-up spell ignore, then it's really powerful. But in addition, it's really strong as well. Catacross is adding +1 to hit, +1 save. You don't need anything like that's great as well. The Ossifector is doing loads of healing and also not loads of healing, sorry, is doing a +1 to wound aura from the Gothizzar cartouche, and with diversionary tactics is making it so you can't deep strike the army as well. The Mortars of Bone Shaper, there's 2 of those as well. One with the Artisan's Key are doing lots of healing in conjunction with Catacross into those 2 units of Necropolis Stalkers, the unit of 6 Immortis Guard, or the Kavalos Death Riders, so you can heal lots of those as well. So the recursion in the list is working super, super well. But in addition to that, the recursion is working nicely with a spell ignore, so you don't even have to worry about it. It's quite fun. It's quite fun. I quite like that. And we're probably going to see that more in the new GHB. Alex Sinclair was running Bellacor's Big Day Out, which was a Zinch Guild of Summoners list with a Changecaster, Curseling, Fluxmaster, Ogroid, and a Bellacor. 20 Pink Horrors, 10 Carrick Acolytes, 10 Carrick Acolytes, and then a Burden Citadel is each, Chronomantic Cogs, and the Demonic Simulacrum. So reroll casts, do some mortal wounds at range, block the enemy up with 20 Pink Horrors, shut down the enemy with Bellacor, do loads of spells, and then finally Kragnos in Phil C's Dad Bods list in Ogre Tribes. He's got a Butcher, a Tyrant, well, 2 Tyrants in fact, 2 units of 4 Iron Guts, and then 6 Ogre Gluttons. The Tyrants have got the big name Brawler Guts, which means it's going to be doing mortal wounds on 3s when they charge on their Ogre charge for every dice roll. So you roll, let's say, an 11, you roll 11 dice. And the reason the Kragnos is in the list is he makes you charge on 3d6 instead of 2d6. So loads of damage. Charge in, just do absolutely loads of damage on the mortal wounds when you charge in, and then you fight twice with the Iron Guts, and you just get in. Really good. Absolutely huge. I hope everyone in New Zealand had a lovely time. Our last event is the Broken Ranks Q2, yeah, in Illinois, GT. It was organised by Jake Catchy Muir. Wait, hold on. It was organised by Jake Catchy Muir. And it was won by Jake Catchy Muir. He's done a Dayton. He's won his own event. What a classic. What a classic. It took place at Grognard Games in Illinois. Now, I haven't been to Grognard Games in Illinois, but if you were going to go there, it's on a pretty sweet-ass strip mall. There's a diner nearby, a pizza place, you can get your eyes looked at, and across the way, there's kebabs, records and toys, and also there's a sports nutrition centre. So, like, honestly, get yourself there. Yeah, a classic Dayton is what he's done. But what was he running in his list? Well, he was running an Ossiarch Bonereapers Mortis Praetorians army. He had Catacross, Archon the Black, Mortis and Bowshaber with the Aura of Sterility, which is reducing shooting coming into the army, and an Artisan's Key. 1 unit of Kavalos Death Riders, a unit of 6 Immortus Guard, a unit of 2 Morgus Archi, and a unit of 3 Necropolis Stalkers with the Nightmare Predator. Now, I know this is another Ossiarch Bonereapers 5.0, but like I said earlier, the limited availability of what can go inside this army, because we have talked about the Crawler is trash when written, and then Mortek Guard and also the Harvester, which is the support piece for that, got massively reduced thanks to the FAQ. So it does feel like many of those units are going to work in line, and 3 of those units in the book maybe are not as playable anymore. So before anyone jumps on the Ossiarch Bonereapers kind of bandwagon, I'd say just be conscious that the book doesn't have a lot of room for growth if those units get harassed quite aggressively. So I think that's worth talking about. Then you've got Kevin Engel with his Ogre Moor Tribes going 4-1. Patrick Dugan with his Hostess and Esh army going 4-1. And then and congratulations to both of those two as well. Okay, so don't forget, if you want to go and check out stats in more detail, you can go to thehonestwargamer.com and check out the TSN stats organised by Rob, not me, the better Rob, and Ziggy. And there's loads of data on there, and we still have a bunch more data from this GHB to put in. The important part to look at, which I think is really valuable to go check out for yourselves, is go look at the faction win rates, but more importantly, look at them on each battle plan. You can see a significant difference here. For example, on the Jaws of Galette, the Blades of Khorne only have a 41% win rate, whereas their overall win rate is 53%. Whereas for Ours for the Taking, Disciples of Tzeentch, which is, by the way, Ours for the Taking is the second most popular battle plan in all of the packs that you'll see played. It has a 63% win rate, as does Karajan Overlords. So what you've got is a much different meta based on the battle plan usage. One of the things I'm going to talk about on the Age of Sigmar Monday show, which I'll be doing later, is I'll be talking about how battle plans are actually really, really important in being able to balance the game more so than we see here. But as a kind of quick snapshot, if you look at the actual win percentages for the game, the win percentages are pretty decent. There's no one holistically over 55% win rate, and there's only 4 or 5 factions below 45% win rate, and some of those are very close. Nighthaunt, Ironjaws, and Seraphon are at 43%. It's only the 2 armies, Cities of Sigmar, who are getting a new book, and Cruel Boys, who have been a bad book since they got released, that are low down. Cruel Boys need a rewrite. Cities of Sigmar is getting a rewrite. So I think that's quite interesting as well. Ironjaws is an older book. Seraphon's win rate is going to go up with their new book, so that's based on older data. And Ironjaws and Nighthaunt are in a really interesting place where maybe just some points reductions is going to really change the shape of how they work. So I think that's really worth looking at if you get the opportunity. Please do look at the stats and click the tabs. The tabs do things, and they change the shape of the game drastically. For instance, let's just take a look at Prize of Galette. In that battle plan, some of these armies, Tzeentch and Blades of Khorne, really drop their win percentage massively, where Lumineth Realm Lords, which are normally a 1-drop battalion, go up massively, up to 63% win rates. That's really worth looking at. Also, if you take the opportunity to go and look at the win rates over time, that's also really valuable as well. For Iron Jaws, you can see that Iron Jaws have, at one point, were doing okay, but they've maintained a pretty healthy win rate, but their win rate has definitely dropped as their meta representation has dropped down as well. So players who normally would do well have moved on to other armies, is what you're seeing there. It's really healthy to go look at, really, really good. Positive win rate potential is really good as well. Lots of people said Sons of Behemoth, including me. I am not adverse to being wrong. Said Sons of Behemoth would really struggle to compete in this edition, and I was happy with that. But they do have the highest positive win rate potential. This means if you pick up a Sons of Behemoth army, you're most likely, out of all of the armies, to win 3 games out of 5 games than any other army. And that's awesome. Because that means that you can pick up a really easy to play army and engage with people. You can go look at the win rates into the different tiers as well. So there's lots of data to look through. And I might do that once I get the most up-to-date data in. I'll do a big breakdown. But obviously, we have the new GHB on the way. Apparently, it's going to come out on the 30th. And it looks like it's going to be pretty significantly different. And also, in addition, we'll get the Battle Scroll update. So we'll see points changes for loads of the different armies as well. So we're going to see points changes, rules changes, and a big meta shift. So the game currently is in a massive state of flux. And also the lists are going to change, and the rules on how you play are going to change as well. So the game is going to be amazingly different in the next few months. And so that's really fun, because I feel like we've only just got to how this game kind of looks in these 6 months, which I'm enjoying as well. Some armies do seem like that they're very good, but no armies seem like they're too strong. And that's my professional opinion as someone who talks about this every single week and has talked about things like this every single week for years. Do I think that some units need a points reduction? Or increase? Definitely. Do I think the internal balance in some armies is really skewed? Yes. And that's because, and Bonereapers are a really good example, some units just aren't as playable as some of the other units. And that's on Games Workshop, and not really on how you design or build lists, which I think is interesting as well. Loads to talk about with Competitive Age of Sigmar. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I hope you're having a fun time. If you are, let us know in the comments below what events you're going to and all those other stuff. Thank you to everyone who supports me, like everyone on Twitch, and most importantly, everyone on Patreon. Couldn't create this content without you, so thank you to all of you. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed.